You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Virat Kohli called it a bigger achievement than winning the World Cup. Yes, the 2018-19 Border Gavaskar Test Series win over Australia ranks that high for the Indian cricket captain, and now he and his Indian team are in Australia, having shared the spoils in the T20 and ODI series, and it's time to start the big one, the 4-match Border Gavaskar series. Steve Smith is back this time. David Warner will return later. Tim Paine is still Australian captain, and after starting his Team India career as an opener on the last trip down under, Mayank Agarwal was the only shoe-in for the opening spot on 17th December. So now that you know just how important this series really is, let's take you through everything else you may want to catch up on before you tune in on Thursday morning 9 a.m. for that big toss. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I am Mendra Dorji. And of course, the biggest of the news is the Indian playing 11 that was announced on the eve of the match. Prithvi Shaw has got the nod for the second opener spot ahead of KL Rahul and Shubman Gill. And even for the wicketkeeper spot, India have gone with a safe bet, playing Ridhiman Saha ahead of Rishabh Pant. Now, the Shaw call has, on expected lines, got divided reactions, especially with Prithvi failing to make any big runs in the two practice games in Australia. His highest score was a 29-ball 40 in the first innings of the second match. He, however, was who India opened with in New Zealand when Rohit Sharma was out injured earlier this year. In the two games, he scored one half-century. However, it was Shubman Gill who was thought to be the front runner for the spot, with both Alan Border and Sunil Gavaskar, men who the series is named after, saying they were left impressed with him in the practice games. So, well, here's where I bring in Ayaz Memon, senior cricket writer and a regular guest on the Quint's Sports Podcasts. Ayaz, what do you think went behind India deciding to go with Prithvi Shaw ahead of maybe even Rahul and Shubman?
I think it's to do more with not his current form, obviously, which has been rather shallow, but what he's done in the past. Remember, even in New Zealand last year, where India struggled, or the last season, Prithvi Shaw did have a couple of impressive knocks, including a half-century. And, one can say that they've kept the faith in the young man. Now it's time for the young man to repay the faith of the coach and the captain. But certainly this is going to be he won't get a long rope now. He's going to get a very short rope to prove himself. Because there is Shubman Gill snapping at his heels. Shubman was in very good form, or at least looked in very good form. And then there's KL Rahul lurking in the background, a white ball specialist, but also somebody who's part of the test squad because he's a very good option.
Okay, now also just a quick plug here. Ayaz and I will be bringing you the Aussie Challenge podcast every day throughout the test series, where we analyze each day's play. So do tune in at the end of, each day. Okay, now moving on. Another big choice India had to make was that of the wicketkeeper they go with in the series opener, Ridhiman Saha or Rishabh Pant. Now, just a year back, Virat had called Saha the world's best keeper, as India chose him over Pant in the South Africa tests. But earlier this year, Pant was picked for the New Zealand tests. In the two practice matches in Australia, Saha played both and made a 50, while Pant played just one and made a century. But could one century be counted as enough to trump Saha's experience, especially with some key senior players missing from the Indian lineup? Now, Ayaz, are not surprised with the call India made here?
That's justified. I mean, Rishabh Pant couldn't find a place as a batsman alone. Saha is by far the far superior wicketkeeper, and in a test match scenario where you're playing for 5 days, the concentration levels required and the skills required are far greater. I think Saha is a choice, because you look at it this way: if you drop an important catch, theoretically, if you drop a Steve Smith, that could seal the fate of the match. So you want your best man in that position rather than somebody who may be a better batsman but not the best specialist for the job.
Now, another big, almost uncertainty India faces are the conditions First time India's playing a pink ball day-night test overseas, and things could be much more different than when they played under lights at Kolkata against Bangladesh about a year back. Also need to mention here that Australia are unbeaten in the 7 day-night pink ball matches they've played, although India have a little bit of an edge at the venue, having won the series opener in Adelaide by 31 runs during the last Border Gavaskar series 2 years back. But I ask again now, is that enough?
Yes, so I mean India's record at Adelaide isn't bad, and the last series we won the match there. But Australia's record in pink ball day-night cricket, test cricket is fantastic. They won everything at this venue. As you mentioned, 7 out of 7 is a fabulous record. So it's going to be tough, and especially when you look at what Mitchell Starc has done. He's got 42 wickets in pink ball cricket, so he's a devastating bowler. Then there's Hazelwood and Cummins, and let's not forget that in the 2 warm-up matches we saw none of these 3 bowlers, nor also James Pattinson, in case if Australia go with four fast bowlers. May not be possible, but if they decide to go with 4 fast bowlers, it could be even more troublesome for the Indian batting. So I think just having played Bangladesh at the Eden Gardens, won that match quite easily, is not enough experience, or not rich enough experience under night, in day-night cricket with the pink ball. So that is something which is going to really challenge the Indian batting. And I must emphasize here that however well the Indian bowlers have been performing, and they've been performing extremely well, they still need enough runs on the board to defend. You can't give them 225, 240 runs and say, now defend this. It's not going to be possible on Australian pitches for Australian batsmen, in-form batsmen, to, crumble for less than that. So I think India need to, the onus is on the batting to provide 375 at least, if not 400, 425 runs when they go out to bat.
Okay, now more on the 22 players who will be playing the match that hopefully will last all 5 days. There's some big names missing from the series opener. In fact, India won't have Rohit Sharma. Australia won't have David Warner. I will get to Warner in a bit, but Australia's openers' problems may just be bigger than India's. Will Pucovski was expected to be Warner's replacement, but he's also out injured. And Joe Burns, another option, is quite out of form. So a few concerns there, I ask. Or will we see an inspired selection and someone completely unexpected walking out to bat at the top?
They've been talking of opening with Matthew Wade or Marnus Labuschagne, which is actually a makeshift arrangement, because Warner really is their best opener by far. And also, as we speak, there's some talk of Steve Smith. He's got a sore back, though they've said that he won't miss the match, but if he's got a sore back, it could be a bit of a handicap. So Australia have their own worries in the batting, of course, but they're playing at home, so in that sense, it still gives them that advantage. I think India will have to really perform maybe 20-25% better than they have in the longest format to put it across Australia in the first match of the series. And the first match of the series is very, very important because it sets the tempo and the tenor for the rest of the series.
Now, David Warner. That Australia is missing a big player in the opener, we know. His injury is expected to allow him to play second test onwards. But Adelaide and Warner, well, that's a narrow escape for India. Some numbers actually to back my statement there. Warner is the highest ranked opening batter in the ICC test rankings at number 6. He scored 786 runs in 5 tests in their last home season. In the last day-night match at Adelaide, he scored a record 335 runs against Pakistan. He averages 80.38 at the venue of the first test with 4 centuries and a half century. He scored hundreds in both innings the last time he played against India at Adelaide. So you sort of get the idea, right? KL Rahul didn't say he sort of hoped Warner would be out with his injury for long without good reason there. Okay, now moving to Indian players to lift the mood of this podcast a little bit, and that's Cheteshwar Pujara. By far India's highest scorer in the last Border Gavaskar trophy with 521 runs in 7 innings. But I have just had one concern, however. The form Pujara was in during the last Border Gavaskar trophy, he sort of hasn't hit that high since, has he? Is it fair to expect an encore from him this time round as well? Also, just want to quickly mention here that he played just the first practice game and scored a half century.
Well, the onus is again the challenge. This is the challenge that Pujara has. I mean, he should be right now at the peak of his prowess. So 2 years back, he had a fantastic series. 500 plus runs in Australia is terrific. And not just that, he just ground out the Aussie attacks, the bowlers. and gave India the winning opportunity, or laid the foundation for that. So I think the Aussie bowlers will be looking at getting Pujara cheaply, because he can just bat on and on and on. And of course, the other batsmen they'll want to see the back of is Virat Kohli, because while he didn't make 500 runs or whatever the last series, but before that in 2014-15 he was that's where he forged his reputation as a world-beating batsman. That's when he made almost 600 runs, and in great style. So Kohli's style is more forthright, he's more attacking, he's the kind of guy who can set up a win for you. Pujara's is more, watchful, more circumspect, and he'll wear down the bowlers, and both styles, both approaches have their uses. I think really these two batsmen need to click, and we all know that Kohli is playing only one match, so somebody else will have to step into Kohli's shoes after he comes back and be that attacking batsman once the captain is not there.
Okay, now one player who sort of goes under the radar considering the immense pace that Australia's attack boasts of, Nathan Lyon will be a man to watch. He's actually the second most successful spin bowler against India in tests after Muralidharan. 85 wickets in 18 matches. And a not so fun fact about him, among his Indian wickets are Cheteshwar Pujara and Ajinkya Rahane, who he has got out the most number of times, 9. And next is Virat Kohli, who has fallen to him 7 times. So that's one big danger man for India, isn't it, Ayaz?
Yes. In fact, he's been, as you mentioned rightly, he's been kind of understated, below the radar, because there's so much talk of pink ball and fast bowlers and Stark and Cummins and Hazelwood. But Nathan Lyon is a match-winning, outstanding bowler, and whether he, even on Indian pitches we've seen him do that, even in Australian pitches certainly. Without him, the attack is not complete. Even if they play 4 fast bowlers, they still have to include Nathan Lyon. They can't think of dropping him. He's a classical orthodox off-spinner. He gets a lot of rip and bounce off the pitch. And he's a very clever guy, he's just so experienced. So I think, he's going to be a handful for the Indian batsmen. It's not just the fast bowlers.
Okay, and now before I end this podcast, the two big stars, Virat Kohli and Steve Smith. Now, they're expected to play massive roles. I don't need to mention here, but I ask, considering Virat plays just that one test match before returning to India, and his immense success at Adelaide, 3 of his 6 centuries in Australia have come at this venue, we should expect a big parting gift from the Indian captain here. In fact, among the two players, who do you think will play a more influential role for their team?
I think it's a very interesting. The question is, obviously will come up, because these two are the leading batsmen amongst 3 or 4 in the world. But who will be more influential in the Adelaide Test is something that we all have to wait and find out. I think Virat the gauntlet is thrown at Virat, because Steve Smith has played far more day-night pink ball cricket, and he's playing at home. So one would imagine that he'll be far more comfortable. But that is where somebody who's a champion batsman and rated by so many to be the best in the world, he has to come up with the goods, and that onus is on Virat.
So, I hope we've covered most of the big points around team selection, conditions and injuries ahead of the series opener. It's a 4-match test series, and with this one being a day-night game, days will start at 9:30 a.m. Toss is at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning of only the biggest match for India in this calendar year. So good luck to both teams. India.
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.